Good morning. Can you hear me? Good morning. I know it's early. Once again, good morning. Thank you. Welcome to day 5 at IEEE Quantum Week. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you this morning. And what I would like to do is right now invite Dr. Greg Bird, who'd be talking about some of the papers that are going to be getting awards today. And we'll be following that up with Dr. Rajeeb Hazra, who'll be doing the keynote this morning. So thank you. I'd like to welcome Greg.
All right. Good morning. I am not a track chair for the Quantum Technologies and Systems Engineering track, but it is my pleasure to announce the best papers from that track. Beginning with third place, the paper is the development of titanium nitride, aluminum nitride-based superconducting qubit components from Benedikt Schoof, Moritz Zinger, Harsh Gupta, Mark Tono from TU Munich, Simon Lang, Danielle Zahn, and Johannes Weber from Fraunhofer Institute. The authors, please come up if you're here. Okay, they may not be here, but when you see them, congratulate them. The second place paper is Precision Frequency Tuning of Tunable Transmon Qubits using Alternating Bias Assisted Annealing. This is a group from Rigetti Computing, Zichao Wang, Joel Howard, Ayod Sede, Greg Steele, Cameron Kopas, Stefano Paletto, Qian Wu, Mark Field, Nicholas Chirac, Christopher Ekberg, Hilal Kanstajilu, Raja Kata, Josh Mudis, Andrew Bestwick, Kameshwar Yadavili, and David Pappas from Rigetti. If any of those authors are here, please join us. And the first place paper is Engineering Quantum States with Neutral Atoms. Jan Belevsky from NERSC and Lawrence Berkeley, Milan Komjacha from QERA, Katie Klimko from Berkeley, Siva Darba, Mark Hirschbrenner from Illinois, Pedro Lopez, Fangli Liu from QERA, and Dan Camps from Berkeley Labs. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. Congratulations to all the award winners. And thank you, Greg, for the presentation. I appreciate it. For all of you, I think, who don't know me, I am Anand Sancheti. I am the Vice President of Marketing and Communications from Quantinuum. And today, I'd like to introduce you to Raj. Raj is the President and CEO of Quantinuum and has more than 3 decades of experience in supercomputing, quantum, and technical roles all across the globe. Prior to joining Quantinuum, he served as the General Manager at Micron Technologies and spent 25 years at Intel Corporation leading enterprise and government group. Before joining Intel in 1995, Raj was with the Lockheed Corporation based in NASA's Langley Research Center and prides himself on building high-performing teams with growth mindset and a culture of truth and transparency. Raj has a PhD and a master's degree in computer science from the College of William and Mary in Virginia, United States, and a bachelor's degree in computer science from Jadavpur University in Calcutta, India. And he holds more than 16 patents. Please welcome Raj on stage, presenting the keynote. Thank you.
Someone has a clicker for me? That's it. Well, good morning. Now that we've sorted some infrastructure problems out. Good morning. Congratulations to the winners. I'm sure it's a great feeling, but more than that, it's kind of great tailwinds to continue and accelerate research. Thanks, Anand, for that introduction. It's been fun for the last 30 years, but I'm yet to win an IEEE Best Paper, and the hopes for that are quickly fading, given what I have to do for my job. So good morning again. It's my first time at an IEEE Quantum Conference, Quantum Week, and I'm excitedly here this morning. I heard this is about 1,600 registrations or folks attending, and particularly heartening was to hear that it's a 60%, 40% academic or industry versus academic, and 250 plus students here, including some high school students. That's awesome, because this is the new frontier, and everybody who is here today working in this field are a little bit like Lewis and Clark from the state that I used to live in till about last year ago, which was Oregon. So today, what do I want to do? I have 29 minutes and 4 seconds, the clock says, to talk to you about where we, as an industry, go. There's a lot of activity, there's a lot of experimentation, there's a lot of research backed up by decades of theoretical work in the community. But where do we go from here? What paths do we see? And what particularly we as Quantinuum are taking as our path forward. And so with that, I want to talk a little bit about this notion of getting to a state in the technology where we achieve universal, fully fault-tolerant quantum computing. Why is it important? Why is it important we get there, right? It's for multiple reasons, but the biggest one is we believe, and I think this belief is coalescing in the community, that the value from quantum computing, as you look at quantum being yet another and potentially a breakthrough way and a novel way to compute, adding on to years of work in classical compute and the world of HPC and quantum coming together, that is only going to be enabled when we have quantum computers that are universal, that they are not special purpose devices or special purpose for only one or two algorithms or use cases. And so that's the universal part, and then they're fully fault tolerant. That is, more of the energy from the community will go into the insights and the outcomes from it versus trying to see if you want to believe in those outcomes and insights. So that is why it has been for a while a hope and a prayer. It was a prayer 5 years ago, or maybe even 10 years ago, when it really seemed like NISQ, the era of NISQ, was here to stay forever, and all of the approaches to achieving full fault tolerance were more like Holy Grail or Hail Marys or whatever your favorite terminology is. Well, today's discussion on my part is to say it's no longer a hope and a prayer. It is now our responsibility, and we see a path, a clear path to get there. The second important point is it's not just a clear path to get there in the next 50 years, 100 years, but in the next decade or less. And in particular, by the end of this decade, we believe we can get to a position where we can unleash the power of quantum computing on a large number of use cases that bring both quantum to the forefront of things you couldn't have done before, or things you can do more efficiently or better now. And it's important that a new form of computing serve both purposes. So without much further ado on the introduction, it's about the first time I've spent most of my time on the title slide, but I think that it's needed up some setting. Let's move on. So we at Quantinuum, how many people here are familiar with Quantinuum? All right. For those that aren't, and just like the airlines say, even if you're a frequent flyer, you should listen to the safety demonstration or whatever they call it. I'll do that. We are based out of Broomfield in the US, and Cambridge and Oxford in the UK. 500 employees across 8 offices. I already said US, UK, Germany, and Japan being the major countries. We've got 375 plus of those 500-ish folks are PhDs and masters, and we believe this is the largest concentration of quantum experts outside of academia under one roof. 200 scientific papers. We are very, very committed to publishing what we do. This is part of our culture, where we say if we are doing things that we want the peer community to look at it, to review it, and that builds our conviction then that we are on the right track. It also makes us better when we get feedback. And we've got 100 plus patents as a business that is obviously in the process of building value, creating value. We take patenting very seriously as well. The cross-domain subject matter expertise that you see on the right is particularly important for us, because this is the lingua franca gap, or the last 10,000-mile gap between computing and its use. So we have a number of folks that are focused, that are domain experts within the company on telling us how quantum computing is going to be used in quantum algorithms, for example, applied to chemistry, or natural language processing under artificial intelligence, condensed matter physics, obviously cybersecurity, one of the prime early drivers for thinking about quantum computing, and financial use cases. So this helps us understand the context of the end user or the end customer, and also help participate with them in accelerating their journey on using quantum computing. Makes us a little bit unique in some ways, where we aren't just building the infrastructure and saying, I hope you can use it, or even before that, I hope we got it right. So with that, we deliver a full stack value. What we've taken on, and it's kind of how we were formed by a combination of Honeywell Quantum Solutions, which focused on building state-of-the-art quantum computing hardware, and Cambridge Quantum Solutions, which was focused on writing the best, discovering the best quantum algorithms, creating the best software, bringing them together in a full stack. And that's how Quantinuum was formed in 2021. So the result of that is we bring the best of those two, and the code design of those two, and the co-optimization of those two into one full stack. At the bottom, you will see, let me start from the top. Maybe it's easier to approach it from the customer standpoint. From the top, you'll see essentially libraries. I call them libraries. Some people could call them applications. I tend not to call them applications for a particular reason, but these are domain-specific libraries. In Quanto is our molecular and materials discovery, aka chemistry libraries. We have other algorithm libraries in machine learning, Monte Carlo integration, quantum natural language processing, and we also host third-party software on the layers above, and I'll talk about that in a second. The next layer then is what we call the orchestration layer, right? So if you're going to have hardware, and not just one hardware, but multiple kinds of quantum hardware, what is your orchestration layer? This allows you to use these libraries, create workflows, manage workflows, collaborate across multiple folks and sites, all based on the value of the powers of the cloud infrastructure. And it's a workflow orchestration platform. A part of that is the Ticket Quantum SDK, which is open source and has more than 1.6 million downloads. That gives you a total developer and deployment platform to take your quantum algorithms or the workflow use cases you've delivered and now get ready for deploying them on either simulators that are built in or real hardware, as it's becoming more prevalent. The next layer is quantum error correction. This is kind of that funky thing of whether you say that's the application's job or the software's job or the hardware's job, and the answer in true quantum spirit is yes and yes, right? And what the reason I call it out separately is obviously we've built our hardware, which is Quantinuum systems, to not only be able to take our error correction methods that we develop, and I'll talk about that in a second, but others as well. And you'll see some examples of that, particularly if you've been following the literature in the last couple of months. And then at the bottom is our hardware and other quantum computers, particularly gate-based quantum devices. So when you look at this stack, you see two things. You see a connection right from I have this problem to solve to getting it solved on real hardware. And the second thing you see is choice. That is, we aren't a vertical full stack walled garden. In the early days of quantum, and we believe we are still in the early days of quantum, it is important to be able to experiment openly. And so we have folks that we work with who would want to take the algorithms that they're developing and run it on a trapped ion system, or a superconducting system, or a neutral atom system. And we allow that through the layers of software we build for them to do that. Of course, we believe that we do that in the hardware the best. But if that's not the case, we learn, and we learn why. But we still allowed that choice to go through. So we are a full stack, and from a solution/software perspective, a platform-inclusive company. That is our fundamental approach to the world of quantum and the quantum ecosystem today. So we've been following this philosophy over 3 generations of quantum computers, right? And the little drawing you see on the side is actually our latest generation system. It's called H2, system model H2. I'm holding it up. That is the actual trap. That's the front of it. That's the back of it. You can see the pinouts. It's really that, and that hosts 56 qubits today, very high fidelity qubits. And over 3 generations now from H0, H1, and H2, we've followed a philosophy of increasing scale while improving fidelity at the physical qubit level. We were the first to demonstrate real-time error correction because we had a capability in our architecture of something called mid-circuit measurement. So instead of waiting till all the computation ended and then testing for errors, we could actually look at it or examine extract syndromes and correct in the middle of the computation itself, and that's vital if you're going to pay large time penalty overheads. We were first to get 99.9% 2-qubit gate fidelities in a commercially available quantum computer. I'm glad that point comes up because our machines are not just test machines. They are our R&D factory as well, but there are others that are using it. Our customers are using it. And so we have to make them commercial in the sense that if you take money from someone and you're promising an SLA in return, these can't just be purely research machines that aren't predictably up, that don't resiliently have a set of features that stay for the customer to be able to expect to use over time. And so these are three generations of commercial quantum computers that we've been able to improve in its lifetime and generate these results. The third one being quantum volume. 2 to the power 21 was what we demonstrated last. And this is, if you want to put it in context, that's the second, and I won't name the company, quantum volume is at 2 to the power 9. Now, obviously, you could say, well, if you've got 56 qubits, why aren't you generating a higher quantum volume? As you know, to generate quantum volume or to calculate quantum volume, you need classical compute to verify a portion of the solution. We've now got H2, this machine, that would use so much classical compute just to generate the end of the value of this benchmark, but that it becomes quite prohibitive to do so. But even at a time when it was possible for us and others to do so without breaking the bank and paying a lot of supercomputing time, we were well comfortably ahead. And that all got back to not just number of qubits, but as you know, in the quantum volume benchmark, or if you want to call it that, the measurement, it captures the contributions of fidelity front and center. More recently, while we've been improving the scale of qubits, we've also demonstrated some fundamental leap forwards in the ability to improve fault tolerance. I won't go into this in much detail because it's really out in literature right now and being talked about quite a bit, but the 12 logical qubits that we demonstrated with Microsoft, and Microsoft demonstrated with their error correction code on our high fidelity hardware, is the largest number of entangled logical qubits with the highest fidelity on record on a commercial system. We were able to get 800x improvement in terms of circuit resiliency over what could have been done just with the physical qubits that were used to create these 12 logical qubits. I have to tell you that the rate and pace of innovation, this is something we will remember till the end of this talk, has been dramatic. In 6 months, we went from 4 logical qubits to then 8, and then 12 on the same number of physical qubits. So that is the rate and pace at which we can improve resiliency at scale even today before we further advance the state of the art in the area of both high fidelity physical qubits and error correction. The other one is we're looking long term too. It's not just about what you could do in the next 2 years, 3 years, but we're looking at this whole area of topological qubits, for which for now 2 to 3 decades have been kind of the holy grail promise around creating real fault tolerance and getting beyond the NISQ era. In May of last year, we demonstrated on our H2 machine the ability to create this new state of matter. We call it a new state of matter. It's a non-abelian topological order by braiding. And so if you're interested in that paper, we can certainly make that available. That gives you a glimpse that we aren't just thinking NISQ is forever, that we are exploring ways to get these very high fidelity qubits and this particular architecture that we have in our trapped ion system to be able to generate these next generation or next frontier of error resiliency on these machines. We are building the world's most powerful and reliable quantum computers, and we will continue to build that. We believe, as we move forward down this path, what our customers, what our users are asking us is to build with leading scale and the lowest error rates and offer unparalleled customization, because not all workloads look the same or there isn't just one workload. That is a pretty demanding ask, but that is the responsibilities of leadership, is you get asked to do the impossible. And we've very gladly and happily taken on that challenge. So in my remaining time, I will talk about what are we doing from here onwards as I've spent now the first part talking about why we dare to dream and why we dare to take on that challenge and say that we will have a very significant, meaningful step forward in fully fault-tolerant universal quantum compute by the end of this decade. So let's start with, what do we mean by a universally fully fault-tolerant quantum computer? This may seem like an academic thing, or may remind the students in the audience of kind of your term papers or definitional, foundational questions. But in these early days of the industry, there is a lot of confusion and noise about what these terms even mean. And I think it's important for us, from an intellectual integrity perspective, from a technical integrity perspective, and from a market clarity perspective, to have clarity and to maintain that clarity and measure ourselves to clear definitions of what we say we are building. So what we mean by universal is it can perform any computation allowed by quantum mechanics, practical computation. And if it's not universal, it can be simulated with some amount of a classical computing infrastructure. And that boils down to, you must have both Clifford and non-Clifford gates supported in the machine that you offer to the algorithm. So we believe universal is important. It's not just important, it's critical, because from a industry perspective, if we don't, and we get to domain-specific quantum computers that are only good for certain algorithms, it makes the business case. And if you here also thinking of getting your MBA, you could do a paper on, if you don't achieve general purpose and everything becomes very, very algorithm specific, what are some of the challenges in the economics of continuing to invest in that? Then the next question is, okay, so we understand by universal, what do we mean by fully fault tolerant? Well, first, this one I don't think there's any controversy, but fault tolerance enables errors to be corrected to achieve a targeted accuracy. It's not about getting a fault-free computer to begin with, right? So let's agree that that is the case. It's a specified set. If you target a particular accuracy level, which you could say in terms of circuit errors, circuit depth, whatever your metric is, you achieve fault tolerance to that level, and then you raise the bar. In practice, fault tolerance means you must have real-time syndrome extraction and decoding, so you can actually say, this is when the error happened, this is what the error is, and this is how I correct it, in situ, that is in the flow of the computation. And you must have a complete fault-tolerant gate set enabled by magic states. So all your operations, whether it's encoding, gates, measurement, syndrome extraction, if they are fault-tolerant, now you have a fully fault-tolerant computer, quantum computer, and if you have maintained the Clifford and non-Clifford capabilities or states or gates, then you have a universal, fully fault-tolerant quantum computer. That is what we are going to build. So as I lay that out, let's talk about what is it going to take to do that, right? And we are putting the stake in the ground, saying we will build such a system on our road, and as part of our roadmap called Apollo. It will be a fully fault-tolerant and universal quantum computer. It will maintain the critical features of our QCCD trapped ion architecture, all-to-all connectivity, which is critical for many of the well-known and even upcoming error-correcting codes, mid-circuit measurement, and the ability to reuse the qubit after that, and conditional logic. We will build it and make it available in 2029. And in particular, what we will target for this machine is thousands of physical qubits, hundreds of logical qubits, and the interesting part is the range of logical error rates or error rates. And this is where that customization becomes very, very important. The customization becomes very important because the number of, you get a trade-off space between the number of logical qubits you want and the error rates you want to target. And that we think is important because this quantum computer will run a wide number of algorithms and not just be good for one or two hero algorithms that demonstrate some form of quantum advantage or even supremacy. This is going to be a practical, fully fault-tolerant, and universal quantum computer. So how are we going to get there? When I look at it, I literally do Post-its in my office, and our technical leaders tell me that there are two sets of things that need to progress on a certain clip and cadence. I write them down, and I check on how we're doing against them. The first one is, how do we get to a larger number of physical qubits? And there's three things that need to be done in order for us to get there, to this thousands of physical qubits in Apollo, and even Apollo just being the start of a generation. How do you get to millions of qubits after that? The second is scaling traps to hold more qubits, just giving you more qubit density because you don't want that trap that I just showed you to become at least more than a wafer in size. The third is, yes, we've got qubits, but the way we control them, interact with them, is with lasers. And how do you get laser beams delivered into this highly dense population of qubits in a very small space for gating and cooling operations? So that's just getting to larger number of physical qubits. How do you build fault tolerance? You got to improve overheads and improve the effectiveness of real-time syndrome extraction and decoding, and that's a done. The high rate of error, getting high-rate error-correcting codes so that we can actually use the syndrome extraction while we push on the number of qubits that many would agree do strain the notion of fidelities, right? Crosstalk increases, some of the other error drivers increase. How do we still have the error-correcting codes be effective in providing those logical error rates? And then, how do we build all of this error correction, detection and correction, and maintain a universal gate set, Clifford gates and non-Clifford gates? What you see are my check marks and WIP. The things that we believe we've demonstrated, not just think we have a solution, get check marks. The things that are WIP, I check on. And we collectively work as a team to de-risk those through experiments and then finally demonstrate them in testbeds. So this is kind of the to-do list of getting to Apollo, if you will, on Post-its. Highly oversimplifies the tremendously complex tasks that underlie these, but it's a good way to create a milepost on this journey to Apollo. So let's look at a larger number of physical qubits. The first one is the wiring problem. If you see, I'll decode the marks for you. Check means done. Done as in high confidence demonstrations, including even test chips of where we think we can get it. We have the solution that will not only do Apollo, but scale beyond Apollo. Number second is scaling traps to hold more qubits, getting maturity into the trap architecture as well as into some of the manufacturing technologies needed for those traps. We partner on those with folks that build traps. And that is the horizontal arrow means that's progressing on schedule and on target. And so is the laser beam delivery for individually gating and cooling qubits. When we get to that second list of things is real-time syndrome extraction and decoding. Actually, I'll go back. I think I did disservice to this slide. So if I can just build it back. The wiring problem for individually controlling qubits, I kind of glossed over as, and I may give you the impression that's easy to do, but it is one of the harder tasks in creating scale without giving up fidelity and just pumping a lot of useless qubits out of the trap, or into the trap actually in this case. Because the concept is simple. We use electrical voltages to move ions. Thankfully, they're charged, so you can do that. And at things like 20 or 56 qubits, the design of the control mechanism is very, very, you can see it literally with your eyes. But when you have hundreds and thousands of qubits in there, you can't have that one-to-one. So you must find a way where you can use broadcast methodologies on voltages to say, I'm moving all, not one, but I'm using one signal to move multiple. But then have a way so that all those multiple can do different things, and that's the sort part. And that's what you see on the right here, is in an 8-side 2-grid trap, we've got a sorting operation happening after they've been moved, interacted with one common, what we call an analog voltage, with digital signals. So this is the wiring and sorting problem that otherwise would mean, how do you get to 10,000 qubits? How do you get to 1 million qubits and have that many 1 million voltages going into the trap, right? And this is the solution. The broadcast solution gets that overhead down to multiple qubits, a large number of multiple qubits being handled by one, not each individually through voltages, right? We have a paper on this, so for those that are interested, again, the team here can give you the paper and you can have a look at it. But this was a very fundamental breakthrough that we had to come through. And frankly, I will tell you, as I go around and talk to people, one of the questions posed to me is, can QCCD ion trap scale, right? And before we did this, we asked the same question of ourselves. Having done this, we are very confident the answer is yes, and that's why we put it as plan of record for Apollo. And Apollo, again, isn't an endpoint. Apollo is the start of the practical, fully fault-tolerant, universal quantum computer generation. So I'm glad I didn't gloss over that. On the paving the path to Apollo, on the fault tolerance at scale side, we've made really good progress nailing down the real-time syndrome extraction and decoding part. We obviously have multiple ways to do error correction. We have our own, one of the examples of a recent paper, which you see on the right here, is our own work. We work with partners like Microsoft on their qubit virtualization, which is their name for essentially error detection and correction. And we've been able to achieve something that is really, really significant. We've been able to achieve the ability to say logical to physical overhead, that is the number of physical qubits you need to build a logical qubit, is not hundreds or thousands, but tens or maybe even single digits. I mean, if you just do the math and say, at 56 qubits, if you can generate 12 logical qubits, which is what Microsoft did, then that's very different from even what was published a year or two ago saying you need hundreds of physical qubits to generate a logical qubit. So we are making very good progress. The one that's in the end, it's also on my post-it note, if you notice, is a fault-tolerant universal gate set. And we've got the Clifford gates done, the non-Clifford coming soon. Watch that space, and we will give you what we believe is the right answer there. So that's Apollo. That's our path to Apollo. That's knocking down the challenges to building something like Apollo. It's not just wait till 2029 and you will see this machine. It has never worked in classical computing to do that. You have to mature the technologies. You have to mature the integration of multiple hard technologies, and you have to grow the software ecosystem to use, for instance, logical qubits, to be able to write algorithms that are what we call fault-tolerant algorithms, and be ready for something like a machine like Apollo. So we have 2 more generations of systems we are going to build and make commercially available, so that the experimentation on what is working well, what needs to be improved, is not just our judgment, but is also the feedback from the community that we serve. And that's Helios, which is going to be out first half 2025, so it's just around the corner, and Sol in 2027. Again, you'll see the logical error rates, and you will see the number of logical qubits that we think we're going to achieve, or we plan to achieve at those error rates, right? So again, this is then a roadmap that gets us curing those technologies, curing the ability to integrate those technologies at increasing scale and deliver these machines that are reliable and can be used on a commercial basis. I have been asked a few times if we have taken a random walk through the trap space. If you look at the top line, it's like, someone asked me yesterday, in each generation, do you just realize you made a mistake and you have to go to a new trap? Because that's what it could look like to a quick glance of every generation's trap looks kind of different except between Sol and Apollo. That's not the case. We've always had an Apollo-like QCCD scaling architecture in mind, except you can't get there in one step. And so what we've done, if you look through H1, H2, and Helios in particular, is matured some of the key challenges that you have to do to be able to build a 2-dimensional, highly dense trap like Apollo's. You have to do things in transport, you have to do things in beam delivery, you have to do things in cooling, you have to do multiple things. So H1 is a single track, H2 is 2 single tracks side by side. Helios actually provides a trap crossover, I call it. I'm sure that's the wrong technical term, but it's a junction. And junctions are important because then when you get to Sol, you have what we call a 2-dimensional, it's no longer a racetrack, it's a city block, right? You actually have to make qubits move across junctions and turn corners. And then once you can do that reliably, then you apply things like the wiring and sorting problem solutions and scale that, right? So the trap designs are a part of a long-term roadmap plan to de-risk critical technologies and challenges, and not just, hey, what do we do next time, right? Not like one of those GRE questions that says, if you give you a sequence, can you predict the next one? On this one, you can predict the next one. And so let's talk about that. Apollo represents a point in time, but it also represents the start of a new era for us. And what it does is the first of machines we build very soon thereafter, that with an architecture that can scale to millions of qubits. And we do that in 2 ways. One is increasing the density, the ability to have 50,000 qubits on a single square inch die, that then can go into millions, into high levels of scale by tiling them together, and not having to use very complex photonics or other forms of transport between tiles, but actually transport them across using voltages. So that is one of our plan. It's kind of eerily what the classical computing world has also realized with the notion of chiplets, is you don't have to build everything on one Mongo die. You can have heterogeneous die or heterogeneous functions, but you can then connect them in a chiplet architecture. This is the quantum version of the chiplet architecture. For that, we are looking at the key enabling technologies and have them in R&D, integrated photonics to deliver all the laser beams that we will need. We will no longer be, to get to these levels of scale, you will have to have integrated optics. We will leverage chip tiling, as I just said, and we will have to increase the rate and pace of broadcast signals and sort protocols to actually continue to not have the density be a headwind against the ability to scale and maintain those fidelities. So we have a clear plan with technical conviction on how we get Apollo to be the start of a journey to millions of qubits, physical qubits, 100,000s to millions of logical qubits, and very, very low error rates. We at Quantinuum, if you go to our website, you'll see it says, our mission is accelerating quantum computing. I'll add a little bit of a clarification. Our mission now, with the clear line of sight to Apollo and what is needed to get us to beyond Apollo, is accelerating universal, fully fault-tolerant quantum computing. And that is the mission that 500 of us within the company, working with thousands and now rapidly growing numbers outside the company, are on the path of. And that's our invitation to the rest of the community to join us. We are highly collaborative, to work with us, to work collectively on technologies, to work collectively on benchmarks and specifications, and even policy and regulations that keeps the ability, the promise of quantum computing from being delayed in getting delivered to humanity. I will end with this one quote, and it's kind of interesting that, given where I stand today, it's Justin Trudeau who in 2019 at Davos said that line. The pace of change has never been this fast. And if you really look around and look at all the papers and all the progress being reported on quantum computing, it does feel like, man, the last 6 months have been like very different than the previous 6. And I can guarantee you the next 6 will make this 6 feel old. But he's exactly right. I'm not a politician, so I don't know whether that's true for society and humanity or governmental change, but I will tell you he's right about it in quantum computing. The pace of change has never been this fast, yet it will never be this slow again. And we, collectively, can not only make it happen, but make it our destiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj, for that energizing presentation and sharing your vision about the dawn of what will be an amazing paradigm in the world of technology. So thank you. We are going to open up for some questions. You see 2 microphones over here. Please do line up and state your name, your affiliation, and we do definitely recommend questions around the presentation, talking about a performance, fidelity, scaling. There may be questions that we may not be able to get into for confidentiality reasons, and that's why I'm here to help moderate. Thank you. So please join in for questions.
Hey, my name is Vincent Michaud Hiu. I'm with Xanadu Quantum Tech. I'm really unfamiliar with quantum error correction, and I was wondering, like, how should I think of these logical qubit? Is it like a partitioning of the physical qubit, or like there's many physical qubit contributing to each logical qubit?
Great question. We could go hours on this, and there are people on the team here that can give you whatever level of detail you want. But the way you should look at it is a collection of physical qubits that represent the state that you would have expected in that physical qubit, and make it available to you more resiliently than you would on the physical qubit. So I'll take the point of view of a software guy that's trying to write code that uses that physical qubit, or the qubits in that. I look at it as an abstraction. I look at it as I'm still going to subject that logical qubit. I'm going to code for it like it would have been a physical qubit, except it's going to do its internal management and look at the redundancies of carrying that state resiliently across a number of physical qubits and give me the right answer, right? So if you think about it, and I think, Anand, you're building one of these demonstrations, because it's a frequently asked question. If you think of it like an orchestra, right? So I'm the conductor, I'm the software guy. I want a piece of music to be played as it was written, not errors. And I ask the violin section to play it, right? And there's 5 violinists, and they decide amongst themselves how they're going to play it. Are they going to all play the same thing? So if one stops playing, are there string breaks, all other 4? Or they're going to play different parts of it because they're better and in different parts, their skill sets are different. That's their business, right? But I get, as a conductor, a true faultless rendition by multiple violinists cooperating to play that music, right? That is the most musical analogy I can give you for what a logical qubit is from physical.
Thank you.
Should sound like music to your ears.
Thank you. We have Anthony here, please.
Hi, Tony Prisbiz, Northrop Grumman, and the Council on Superconductivity. When I saw your plan for scaling to millions of qubits, the chiplet architecture is very interesting. I'm curious about how the chips will interact. Is that a movement of ions between chips? Is that a couple of ions come up to the edge of the chip and interact? What's going on there? And are you where does that sit on your list of checks and work in progress and that sort of thing?
So if I understood your question correctly, the question's around
Chip-to-chip interaction.
you're going to have a lot of zones, that's what's called in QCCD, where your qubits are, how are you going to move them between chiplets to keep the all-to-all connectivity, right? Is that your question?
Yeah, are they going to move between chips?
Yeah. So the way we, again, millions of qubits is very different from 1 million qubits to 100 million qubits. So I can't tell you what I tell you now will scale across that range. But what we see is, given how we do transport of our qubits and the nearness, before we get out of 2-dimensional and have to go 3-dimensional other spaces, that we can do that electrostatically, just using potential wells to make qubits jump between chiplets or chiplet boundaries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right here.
Hi, I'm Manos from Technical University of Munich. Let me comment first that it is very interesting that your next QPUs are the sun in Greek, sun in Latin, and then the god of sun, Apollo. But my question is that after Apollo, if I understood correctly, you are going to still be contained in a single chip, more or less. I'm not sure if I understand if there is some kind of modularity and some kind of building blocks and building larger QPUs, distributed QPUs based on that.
So I'm not sure I understood the question 100% or didn't hear.
Can you reframe the question? But I think you may be going into territory where we cannot go into right now. Which is
I didn't even hear the question. So.
Why don't you repeat the question?
It's a bit similar to the previous question, but the question is, do you have any plans for distributed quantum computing and building modular quantum computers based on some building blocks like Apollo and then interconnecting them to build something bigger?
Are we thinking about it? If I get
it?
your question, yes. Are we thinking about in the notion of how classical compute did scale up and then scale out? Are we thinking of scale out? Yes, absolutely, we're thinking about it, right? We're looking at potential ways to do it. I think our interest is ensuring, our more near-term interest in seeing how far you can push without having to go to a scale-out distributed architecture. And we believe there's lots more room in just scale up, right? Which is building more and more dense single, not maybe single chip, but single package traps that can be controlled with lasers. So at some scale, do we have to get to a distributed architecture? The answer is probably yes. Do we think that that is the first problem we have to solve to get to Apollo and a few generations beyond it? No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Candace.
Hi, I'm Candace Culhane from Los Alamos National Laboratory. And, exciting visionary talk. Thank you very much for that. And so my question is a little more philosophical, I guess. One of the great things about being here at Quantum Week is hearing the buzz in the rooms and the chatter over coffee, and I've heard various comments this week, and I'd like to get your perspective. I've heard some people say, we're in the 80s, you know, it's like when massive parallel processing completely disrupted the mainframes, you know, that's where we are with quantum. And I've heard other people saying, are you kidding? No, 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 we're in the 40s. These are bespoke machines. You know, it's like having a couple of ENIACs on the planet. So that's a pretty wide range. And I was curious from where you're standing and using an analogy to our heritage of binary digital computing, where do you think we are?
Great question. Thanks, Candy. It's always good to, I knew it would be a tough question when Candy stepped up. So, where do I think we are? I think we are in the early stages. If I was to use a classical computing analogy, we are more like mainframes right now, right? But it's what happens after that is not, to me, an exact parallel, right? You know, what mainframes did was the mainframe economics became tougher and tougher. Other technologies developed, x86, software, most importantly, when open source and Linux developed. So things became more democratized. As technology layers became more stable, they got APIs and people could depend on one layer looking like that to the layer below. So delamination of the layers happened, people with operating systems without knowing what the machine was, but so specifications happen. I think that's a little ways off, frankly. I think still some of the hard challenges that have to be solved can only be done in co-design, and that does make it look like a mainframe for a while, right? At some point, the delamination will happen very deep, right? You should be able to just get gate-based, you know, for instance, quantum computers, and even today, there's early signs like in Ticket. I sometimes can't pronounce the names of my own software modules, but we already say, you know, we can handle multiple kinds of gate-based quantum computers, but the question is, can we handle them with the best performance that they can deliver, right? That still requires co-design and understanding what microarchitectural features like all-to-all connectivity or mid-circuit measurement is present. So I think I look at it more like the mainframe today, but I don't see it staying like the mainframe or suffering like the mainframe. I think what will happen is it will delaminate. There will be hardware, there will be middleware where error correction falls, because today it's both related to the application or the algorithm, and it's also part of what the hardware has to support. Whether that gets cleanly delaminated or not, or just becomes part of the application. I mean, you submit the application, you submit the error correction that you want that is best for that application. Those are all models that will play out. The one thing I will take the opportunity, even though it may not be part of your question, is this discussion and notion that it's going to disrupt as in obsolete the previous generation of technology, to me, is hogwash, right? And I know we do this to ourselves as technologists, as we say, well, we have CPUs, then we have GPUs, and GPUs are going to eat up CPUs, and to a certain extent that does happen. But I think the power and beauty of quantum computing is it extends human insight generation in a way that you could only do because you have classical computing also improving and the advent of technologies like AI or generative AI or machine learning. And I think the beauty of quantum computing is going to be fully expressed when quantum computers are used to actually make things happen that you couldn't do without quantum computing being in the mix, not replacing classical computers. A very good example is what Microsoft and us are working on, which is not saying, you know, you were doing molecular design by looking at the search space and saying, you know, running trained models to essentially go look at certain properties and predict what kind of molecular properties would best serve them. And you say, oh, I'm just going to not run it on a classical, DGX box or whatever it's called today. I'm just going to replace that with a quantum computer. No, The beauty of that is you use the quantum computer to actually generate unique quantum data that can train these AI models to be more accurate. And then the actual process still runs, but you have a better outcome because your model is better trained with data that it couldn't have had before because you didn't have a quantum computer. Those are the kinds of things that I think are going to be big breakthroughs. So when I hear this, oh, we're working on quantum supremacy or quantum advantage, true, certainly there will be some algorithms where we'll show power benefits, we've already done that, or just performance time benefits. But that to me isn't the casting it in that light where it's A versus B, not A and B, is actually detrimental in the long run to a computing ecosystem that will need both quantum and classical. Sorry, long answer to your question, but.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Sorry. We have about 2 minutes left, so we're going to run through a few questions that are here. So 3 folks. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Rogério de Souza from University of Victoria, British Columbia. So my question is this. You're claiming that you're going to be able to move the ion trap system from 1-dimensional to 2 dimensions, right? Now, I don't think, as I understand, this is a very non-trivial step. And one of the problems is the way the qubits interact with each other. So the C0 gate between 2 qubits uses the so-called quantum buzz, which is a vibration along the line of ions. So I'm wondering, how is that going to work in the 2-dimensional architecture? In particular, the question is, are you going to retain all-to-all coupling in the 2-dimensional architecture? And question number 2, aren't you going to have a lot of crosstalk when you move to 2 dimensions?
Okay, great questions. They're going to take more than 2 minutes to answer. I'll answer part of it, and then I'll make sure you get the answer for someone who's far more knowledgeable about this, right? The answer is yes, we do foresee, up to many levels of scale, maintaining all-to-all connectivity. Now, the answer to how we do that is something that I'm happy to get you in touch with someone on our technical team who's actually already here, and have you sit down and understand what we've done to actually demonstrate that that is possible, right? So the answer is yes. In order to go to 2 dimensions, we're not giving up on all-to-all. In fact, we've demonstrated that you can keep all-to-all. The question is, at very large scales, what does all-to-all mean? Right?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just informed the conversation is going very lively, so my clock got upgraded by another 2 minutes. So if there are more questions, please join in. Thank you. Right here.
Dan Gonzalez from RAND. Thank you for a very interesting and visionary talk. The question I have is, there are some that are concerned that fault-tolerant quantum computers are going to require a lot of power and are going to, the economics of building them and then operating them will be difficult. Are you going to require cryogenics, and do you see the power requirements scaling in a way that's economical for Apollo? Thank you.
You know, I worked hard not to interrupt you during the question, because when you first asked about power, I said, man, you got to be kidding. Have you seen what classical data centers take? Right? So today, the H2 system that takes about 20 kilowatts, I'm not talking megawatts, I'm talking kilowatts, to do for the basic computation, add a few kilowatts for the cooling system or cryogenics, and I'll tell you in a second how that scales or why. It's kilowatts, and it cannot be simulated by one of the DOE supercomputers that takes megawatts, right? So we're not even in the same freaking ballpark as far as I'm concerned. Now, but you ask a great question on scaling. That's true today. What happens in the future, right? The power of quantum computing isn't it's not the old C squared V thing, right? Where you give it more voltage and suddenly the things run faster, right? We will scale power as we get to a larger trap, but that's to maintain the cryogenics, to maintain vacuum, not to actually drive the computational speed, if you will, right? So yes, when we get to, Apollo, will we be much higher or somewhat higher than where we are today? Yes, but we won't be in the megawatts range. Because again, our scalability of performance is not tied to voltages scaling and drawing more power per qubit. It's to actually maintain vacuum across a broader set of qubit numbers. And so I think this power consideration is the only time this should come up is if you're going to spend 20 megawatts of power to go train this large language model, could you do it for 1/3 of that or 1/100th of that and do parts of it on a quantum computer? Power isn't your biggest worry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question right.
I'm Keita Kano from Keynote, a startup company in Japan. So really exciting and encouraging roadmap. So my question is, do you have any plan to make the error-corrected logical qubits available to users before Apollo, or do we have to wait until Apollo? Because the 12 qubits now, logical qubits, not available to users, right? So can we use, as a general users, the error-corrected logical qubits? Do you have any plan that you can share now?
So whatever we do, we will have it in our commercial systems, right? So there's no secret enclave where we only have it amongst us and we don't offer it in the systems we build. It might be true for a while as we are curing the technology, but it'll show up in one of the systems I mentioned. We are looking at ways to make it more generally available beyond our customers. Right? What do we do for an academic ecosystem, for instance? But it isn't that we found it, we'll keep it in the labs. We only think it works when you put it out in a commercial system, which is banged on by users, not just us.
Thank you.
Great. I think one last question.
Hello, my name is Yuri Alexey from NVIDIA Corporation. So I have a question about classical computing, because classical computing is still required, right, to operate quantum devices. As we scale up to millions of qubits, do you think ultimately quantum computing may be bound actually by classical computing? Because Jay, kind of like maybe in our presentation, he mentioned he actually saw early signs that classical computing actually might become actual limit. Do you share this vision or not?
I'm not sure.
Can you, I think can you repeat the last part again with the vision?
Yeah.
Yeah, so question is, as you scale up to millions of qubits, classical computing, I'm talking like, let's say decoder, compiling, these stages will become a bottleneck to capabilities of quantum computing.
Will it become more complex? Yes. Right? I mean, if you're generating, not million gate circuits, deep circuits, but you're generating 10 million, as you get to those error rates, they will become more complex to optimize. But there will also be automation tools like there are today called Ticket, right? So we say focus on writing the code correctly. We take on, because we know the architecture below, the job of optimizing the gates or the circuits to that. There will always be tools. Will the time for that increase? Probably. I mean, at what stage does it become a bottleneck? That's actually a great question. But bottleneck to what, right? I mean, if it was going to take me, in classical compute, 6 months of running a model to figure out or to reduce the search state space for a search, and I'm spending a day longer to do actual compilation of the quantum algorithm and be able to run it in 30 days. They all sound very long time frames, but that's a huge win, right? So it's time to solution. That's the context of whether something is the overhead or not just absolute time, which could go up and will likely go up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I can stay and answer all kinds of questions.
Thank you. One last question over there. Thank you.
Thank you for the very nice talk. My name is Peter Groskowski. I'm at the Oak Ridge National Lab. So my question was about your roadmap. It looked like your next iteration, your next machine will have 96 physical qubits, but yet 4 to 50 logical qubits. Could you share what kind of error correcting codes you'll use to do this?
I'm not going to put that out publicly. We are not talking about it, but I'll just tell you, if you can get to, when we brought the order down to 12 logical qubits from 56, right? We have other tricks in the book. There's also the fully corrected versus where you do post-processing and selection. That's another avenue, although that's not, in our mind, that's not true error correction, but there are other ways to get there. But no, I'm not going to tell you today which code, whether it's a Steam code or something else, a color code that we're going to use.
Thank you.
For that, you'll have to wait, and we'll write it in a paper, and then you can read it.
All right. Thank you, Raj. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think be amiss to say, I think a lot of the detailed notes, including information about the roadmap and the video that Raj mentioned about with the music metaphor, are available in our blog post on our website. We shared that last week. You can also, I think if you go to the blog post, recent news with how we are using the combination of AI and quantum computing, when we released a new paper yesterday, and this morning we went out with a new announcement with HSBC on gold tokenization. So please do enjoy reading those on our blog as well as our marketing collateral. Thank you again, everybody. And the next session here will start at 10 a.m. Until then, appreciate it. Thank you again.